On Love and Hip Hop, there are moments that viewers never forget, and this one might be the most memorable. For days, there have been rumors about a fierce altercation during a private dinner. Whispers from within the set, however, are already creating an even more bizarre image. Many people inside the company claimed that things got so out of hand that Ciara allegedly threw a straight at Mendeecees, a full drink. Additionally, Erica Mina's confession is said to have stopped the entire table cold. According to them, it began as informal discussion. Producers like to portray it as just catching up. However, there was a storm lurking beneath the laughing. Take a break. Even the crew reportedly froze in place as Erica's voice broke through the commotion with a revelation regarding Mendeecees. The atmosphere changed in a matter of seconds. Ciara's eyes met Mendeecees. Her words clipped, her tone sharp. Some say he made an effort to protect himself. Some claim he grinned. The glass then began to rise. When the ice landed, mayhem ensued. The internet is buzzing right now. The cast doesn't say much, and the same question is being asked by everyone. What was it that Erica said that made Ciara lose it? No one outside could really say when the shift began, but the tension had been growing for weeks. Ever though, the cast meals had never been predictable. There was a sense of anticipation before anyone ever took a seat. Soft lighting and strategically positioned cameras had been set up by the producers in the hopes of capturing the customary blend of laughter and slight darkness. Yet there was a shift in intensity. Ciara entered the room in a form-fitting cream dress, her hair pulled back tight, her gaze sweeping the table as if she were taking the temperature of each individual present. Mendeecees was seated 2 seats away, reclining in his chair and browsing through his phone as if he didn't give a damn about who was looking. On the other side of him, Erica sat with an unreadable countenance that could change at any moment from a storm to a smile. Silently enough, the evening started. Between plates and drinks, little chat is exchanged. Kirk was rambling on about a business venture that had gone awry. Rashida occasionally nods in agreement, interrupting to prevent him from continuing. However, the side glances and the tension that was slipping under the table were visible to anyone who paid careful attention. Ciara's eyes continued to stray towards Mendeecees while Erica continued to swirl her wine slowly while staring down at it. The moment was thickened by the air. Erica, with her elbows resting on the table, she leaned forward and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Although she didn't bring it up, there was no denying the gravity of her remarks. She started, staring at her glass. I've been holding something in, and it's been eating at me. The collective pause was nearly audible. Forks froze mid-bite and the air shifted. Curious, Kirk looked up. Sensing difficulty, Rashida's brows furrowed slightly. With a little smirk, Mendeecees looked at her as if he had heard this opening before and wasn't impressed. But Ciara sat up straight in her chair. Recognizing the potential direction of this, after taking a deep breath, Erica went on. Backstage, Mendeecees said something to me. Something that went too far. The response came instantly. Yandi tensed, forming a narrow line with her lips. Kirk stirred uneasily. With a short glance, Rashida urged Mendeecees to speak, but he remained silent. Rather, he folded his arms and leaned back, seemingly challenging Erica to continue. It was a long moment before Ciara broke the silence. What was it that he said? Her eyes locked with mine for a moment. Prior to responding, he made a remark about my body and what I was wearing. It was not a praise, it was impolite. There was a sudden surge of energy throughout the table without any loud gasps or overthought reactions. Kirk muttered something beneath his breath and cleared his throat. No one caught his breath. Rashida put down her fork, obviously anticipating the outcome. Yandi's fingers was curled tightly around her serviette, but her face remained unreadable. When Mendeecees did speak, his voice was quiet, but sharp. It didn't go like that. Erica chuckled briefly, the type devoid of humor. You would say that, of course. Ciara's tone became piercing. Are you implying that she is lying? Then Mendeecees avoided eye contact with her. She's twisting it. I say, his delivery of the remarks made them sound more forceful than they should have. Dismissive, almost bored. Erica's posture straightened as though preparing for a fight, and her expression hardened. The air between them seemed charged, and the tables appeared to contract around them. Ciara's jaw tensed as her gaze shifted from Erica to Mendeecees. She had never shied away from speaking up when she believed someone was being treated disrespectfully, and this time was no exception. She raised her voice a little and added, "You think it's okay to just say whatever you want to people? Huh." Now, Mendeecees looked at her steadily. "You weren't present. I can tell when someone is going too far without having to be there." "Sir," returns. The discussion started to break up. Kirk, attempting to change the subject. Yandi shook her head, refusing to interact, while Rashida muttered to herself that this was going to turn left. However, the bond between Mendeecees and Ciara only got stronger. Every utterance and every look seemed like a spark added to an already lighted fuse. Now that Ciara was leading the charge, Erica took a back seat. She seemed to be silently challenging Mendeecees to keep pushing as her own eyes met his. Sierra remarked, "So, let me get this straight." As she leaned forward, she says, "You said something out of pocket, and your first move is to act like she's making it up." Mendeecees didn't hesitate. In this group, people are always saying things. Now all of a sudden, it's a controversy when it's me. Scandal appeared to linger in the air. Increasing the temperature by 1 more degree, Sierra gripped her glass tightly, allowing the moisture to slide between her fingers. Even the crew, watching from the sidelines, shifted uneasily as she spoke. Even though she wasn't shouting yet, Erica's grin reappeared. Harsher this time, nearly content that the talk had reached the precise she desired. Kirk glanced at the beverages on the table as Rasheda leaned close and whispered something. Kirk recognized that expression in Sierra's face as more than simply rage. It was the instant before she did something she would never be able to undo. Unaware or unconcerned, Mendeecees at this point. He leaned forward, getting closer to Sierra. "Do you wish to believe her? You can choose that," he answered gently. "I owe neither of you an explanation." Though silence, the kind that seems to go on forever, beat through the room. Sierra's lips pressed together as her eyes narrowed. Erica looked from one to the other as if she were watching a match light up. Kirk felt it coming and shifted again. Sierra's arm was touched by Rasheda's hand, an unspoken caution that was totally disregarded. Sierra moved when Mendy saw him reach for his drink. She gripped her glass tighter till her knuckles turned white as her chair scraped the floor. Without speaking louder or making a statement, she simply raised the glass, fixed him with her gaze, and effortlessly slid the entire drink over the table in the direction of his chest. Liquid splashed over his shirt and dripped onto the floor as ice clinked on the wood. Instant gasps, yells, and the scrape of chairs caused the shock. Mendeecees' expression was unreadable as he froze for a split second before pulling away from the table. Now the place was in disarray. Members of the crew moved forward, their hands up in a mixture of fear and hesitancy. But it was too late to cool off. Erica. No one appeared to be willing to slow the flow of the moment. Sierra closed the distance between herself and Mendeecees by moving around the table. Although she wasn't shouting, the ferocity in it was impossible to ignore her voice. "You think you can say whatever you want just because you've been here for a while. Not with me. Not with anyone. Not with Erica." Mendeecees put his elbows on the table and leaned forward once more. "And you believe that you have the authority to determine what truly transpired while you weren't present. I think she's real." Sierra immediately retaliated. He seemed somewhat aback, if only momentarily, by how quickly she responded. A tiny smirk tugged at the corner of his eye as he blinked and turned aside, mouth numbers, as though to demonstrate solidarity. Erica crossed her arms and shifted her body slightly in Sierra's direction. "Before you made the remark, you smirked, but that's exactly what you did now. You chuckled as if it were a joke, and I should have just accepted it with a smile." Mindy's tone became more solemn and lowered. "The bit where you were discussing me first was omitted." That struck the room like another thunderclap. Uncertain of what he meant, several others exchanged glances. For the first time, Erica's voice rose as her brows wrinkled. He said, "That's not how I heard it," in a flat tone. "Don't twist this. What I said wasn't about you like that." Halfway towards the remainder of the table, Sierra sighed in frustration, because someone is always willing to step in when someone exceeds the line. This is precisely why individuals don't come forward. Turn it around on them. Kirk lightly tapped the surface, seemingly to reroute without really entering the flames. "This is going around in circles. You see, he didn't finish, so perhaps we should all just stop." His remark was abruptly interrupted by Erica's voice as she leaned forward. "If you would like me to sit here and act as though nothing occurred, and that won't occur, I'm not going to back down." The legs of his chair scraped the floor when Mendeecees moved it back a little. "You don't need to give up. Simply stop behaving as though your version is the only one that counts." His delivery of it made Sierra's jaw tenses up once more. "Are we all expected to believe you? Then is that it?" He didn't blink in response to her gaze. "Have faith in whatever gets you to sleep at night." At that point, everyone else at the table appeared to change. The disdain in his voice was more than simply the word "zit." The way he seemed to condense the entire discussion into something manageable to dismiss. Erica leaned back, her lips squeezed together, as if she may say something more. In a narrow line, Sierra remained upright, but her hands were now on her hips. Even when she wasn't speaking, her body language was clear. At last, Rasheda spoke, once more, this time with greater conviction. "This is the type of content that frequently appears on blogs. If you all continue," her warning was valid. A crew member was already being instructed to pull specific camera angles in case something went wrong somewhere in the rear. Additionally, there was a rumor that someone had recorded the entire event on their phone before the producers realized. It was almost a given that this would spill outside the set. It was no longer a possibility. However, nobody stood up to go. with the exception of Yandi, who had vanished minutes before. The others remained ensnared in their places, seeing this slow, tense back and forth as if it were a game that no one wanted to play, but that no one could ignore. Now that he was more composed, Mendeecees' tone was almost too measured. If you believe you are the hero, if you hurl a drink at me, feel free to do so. However, it speaks more about you than about me. Sierra remained unflinching. No, it speaks volumes about you. Once more, Kirk murmured something under his breath, but Rashida missed it this time. The producers looked at one another, silently discussing whether to intervene or let the scenario unfold naturally. The cameras remained up and the microphone remained live, suggesting that the decision was in favor of letting it run. At last, Erica leaned closer again, her voice sharper but still quiet. I'm not in need of anyone, may fight my fights, but when someone else recognizes it for what it is, it's telling. Mendeecees' gaze shifted from her to Sierra and back to the table. A fresh glass of water was placed in front of him, and he slowly sipped it. Do you believe you have the complete picture? But you don't. His words lingered there, not as an apology or an olive branch, but as a declaration with weight of its own. Sierra laughed a little, without humor, and shook her head. This time, Erica didn't answer, but her expression indicated that she wasn't done, not by any means. It seemed as though the table was holding its breath. The sound of every cutlery, clink or shifting chair is louder than it should be. The crew was no longer attempting to conceal their movements. There was no purpose. All cameras were focused on Erica, Sierra, and Mendeecees, as though the room's other contents were non-existent. The other cast members sat in that frozen spot between interest and discomfort. Sierra pulled herself back into her seat, unsure if they were witnessing a conversation or the start of something that may ruin the whole evening. But her gaze remained fixed, Mendeecees like someone choosing their next play. She walked slowly and deliberately. Erica remained with her arms crossed, leaning back, and her eyes darting between them as if she was keeping score. Mendeecees was almost too calm, still drenched from the previous drink, and that quiet was beginning to annoy everyone more than if he had simply exploded. He gave her an unblinking glance. It's funny, Sierra said steadily, how the people who say the most out-of-pocket stuff are the same ones who try to play calm when they're called out. It's not serene. It's simply not worth shouting over. Erica sat up once more. Her voice was suddenly harsher. You believe that if you weren't the one who was insulted, it isn't worth yelling at. Mendeecees retorted that I didn't treat anyone disrespectfully. From somewhere down the table came a low groan. Spice finally rested her chin on her hand after remaining silent the entire time. You guys will be back and forth all night because I have more important things to accomplish. You may go. Without glancing at her, Sierra fired. You weren't asked to stay. Spice, obviously not falling for the ruse, grinned and leaned back in her chair. Kirk muttered a low laugh, the type that comes from someone who knows it's better to keep quiet. Rashida gave him a stern look, which quickly silenced him. Erica's voice broke through the background chit-chat. Wished to discuss what was said. Okay, let's discuss it. Mendeecees' forehead raised a little. Proceed. She inhaled, her gaze fixed on him. After everything you've done, you're fortunate to still be able to wear that, I quote you. You chuckled as if it were a joke, and her tone was flat with purposeful words. A couple of silent arseholes snuck out of chairs close by. At that, Spice even straightened her posture. Mendeecees' expression changed, but he didn't refute the words. More strategic and less defensive. And, he said softly, you left out. You were telling folks that I was too old to still be acting like a little boy before I said that. You were the first to approach me. Kay laughed a little incredulously. What the heck? That gives you permission to discuss my body. He leaned forward and whispered. I didn't talk about your body. I mentioned how you always act superior to others and then become irate when they don't agree with you. Sierra interrupted abruptly. No, you went too far. You went somewhere you shouldn't have gone, regardless of whether she made a comment about your age. That's what you think. He shrugged. Sierra's voice rose again as the shrug sparked something within of her. It's fundamental. Respect, not simply my viewpoint. The weight of the discussion seemed to vibrate through the air. Sierra and Erica were both nodding, their mouths pulled together tightly. Mendeecees glanced between them as though he was carefully considering his next move. At last, he leaned back once again and let out a slow exhale. The entire situation might have been discussed. Rashida took notice when he said, but y'all want it to be a headline. Does someone here need to fabricate a story for a headline, in your opinion? You were thrown a drink because you were unable to maintain decorum. That isn't a fabrication. She got no response from Mendeecees. Rather, he returned his focus to Erica. You could have pulled me away if you didn't agree with what I said. However, you desired a crowd. When you stated it, you had a crowd. Erica fired back. You have one. Now while I answer, a few individuals chuckled softly at the sly retort, but nobody dared to laugh aloud. Kirk touched his phone as if he had received a message, but it was clear that he was only trying to avoid making eye contact. Spice poured another glass for herself. She shook her head. A dot. Sierra softly lowered her voice, still bending forward. Are you aware of the issue? What's wrong with what you said is not even apparent to you. What did you say? Mendeecees gazed at her for a while, and you're so certain that you're correct that my words are meaningless. All right, Erica intervened and said, I know what I heard, and they skipped because I was there. The ensuing silence wasn't tranquil. The team was still recording every word and every glare, and there was a whisper that the film from tonight was already being marked for special review. The fans would dispute for days, and the bloggers would devour it. The sound of the chair legs sliding across the floor seemed to slow down everyone at the table. Mendeecees finally pushed his drink away and got up. You want me to apologize for something I don't think was wrong? Equally, he said, and that won't take place. Then don't be surprised when people stop giving you the benefit of the doubt. Erica said, looking up at him without blinking. His jaw tensed, but he didn't respond. Instead, he moved away from the table and moved towards the far side of the room, where one of the producers was standing. As he walked away, the conversation continued, only shifting into whispers. Erica sat forward, her eyes following him until he vanished from view, attention still clinging to the air, as if it had nowhere else to go. And Sierra leaned back in her chair, tapping lightly against her glass. The murmurs filled the room. Like low, many stood with the producer in the far corner, his hands making slow gestures as if he was making his case, while the rest of the table sat in a strange limbo, half waiting to see if he would return, half trying to act normal. Thunder shook every side conversation. Now that Erica's chair was tilted toward Sierra, the two of them engaged in a more subdued but equally heated conversation, and Rashidita leaned in a little to listen without drawing attention to herself. I promise. I wasn't, Erica said. I wasn't even going to bring it up, but given his recent demeanor, no, it had to be said. And the way he tried to downplay it, Sierra said, nodding, her eyes tightening as she looked towards the corner. I did what I did for precisely that reason. 2 seats away, he shook his head and laughed a little. Are you certain you didn't just make this 10 times more massive? Sierra looked over at him. She spoke in a clipped tone. In order to encourage people to pay attention, things sometimes need to get bigger. The focus was drawn back by the sound of footsteps. With an inscrutable face, Mendeecees was once more approaching the table. The producer continued to speak via a headset. Instead of sitting right away, he stood at the head of the table and glanced back and forth between Sierra and Erica. So, this is what will occur. He started out in a steady but tense tone. I'm not going to keep going back and forth with y'all about what was said. You have your story, I have mine. Fine, but I'm not going to be disrespected either, Erica said, brought up a brow. You also believe that your initial behavior was not impolite. You can say that again, he said. However, that does not prove it. Rashida rubbed her temples and sighed. To be honest, this is really draining. Erica lashed back. It's exhausting when you're trying to pretend it's nothing, but it's about not wearing yourself out when you're the one. It enrages me. With a harsh tone, Sierra leaned forward once more. You simply don't understand. Mendeecees glanced in her direction. I understand that you're using this as a point of contention because it provides you an excuse to attack me. Like a spark in parched grass. The remark landed. Rashida swiftly extended her hand and placed it on Sierra's arm as her chair began to scuff back once again. Don't, it's not worth it. Sierra's voice rose as she added, no. He won't sit here and ask why I defend someone. I've been through too much to tolerate such a mess from anyone. Mendeecees did not recoil. I've also experienced enough to recognize when someone is merely attempting to elicit a response. After a few lengthy seconds of silence, Erica spoke again in a lower but still incisive tone. You know what's depressing? All you had to do was own it. My bad. May have been your response, even if you didn't mean it the way it came out, but you doubled down instead. His jaw tensed as he gazed at her, but he held back from speaking. Kirk moved around in his chair, obviously uneasy. Spice drank her drink and whispered something about how this is going to blow the internet while she watched with a slight smirk. At last, Mendeecees said, I'm not going to. The suggestion lingered in the air, not missed on anyone at the table. I apologize for something I didn't do. You can twist it, you can run with it, and you can make it a storyline that's on you. But I'm not feeding it. Make it a storyline. Sierra's heels clicked on the floor as she pushed her chair back and stood up, straightening her dress. Before leaving the table completely, Erica exhaled slowly, her face hardening. Then, don't be surprised when the storyline writes you as the villain. Remaining sat, she watched her leave before returning her attention to Mendeecees. You can act like this is over, she murmured in a low voice, but it's not. He didn't respond. He simply took his untouched plate, sat down again, and resumed, eating as though it hadn't happened in the last 20 minutes. Slowly, small chat was resumed by the remainder of the table. However, the energy had changed, becoming strained and unpleasant. The team was already looking at each other like a crack in a piece of glass behind the cameras. A few of them shook their heads, while others smirked. A few of them muttered about how quickly the leaks would begin. Someone said they had already received a text from a buddy inquiring about the veracity of the rumors. Mendeecees remained silent the entire time. Erica did not return. Sierra too sat with her arms folded. She was obviously still revisiting every moment of what had just happened in her head. And that's the current situation. One remark, one confession, and one glass of alcohol flying across the table turned the entire evening upside down. Already, fans are overflowing social media with their own theories, analyzing each smile, glare, and spoken phrase captured on camera. Some others are supporting Erica because they believe she finally called out behavior that has been ignored for too long. Some are supporting Mendeecees, saying that the entire situation was exaggerated for dramatic effect. After that, there are those who are always discussing Sierra, complimenting her for stepping in, and wondering if she went too far. The reality: no one outside that room is aware of the specifics of what transpired. Furthermore, it's obvious that the accounts of those who were present differ. We do know, however, that there is no immediate end in sight to the tension that exists between these three. This is the type of cast fracture that alters the entire dynamic, whether it occurs on camera or off, the kind of season that fans remember long after it's over. Sierra was correct to interrupt and make her point the way she did, but I want to hear from you now. Was there any justification for Erica to place it on the table in front of everyone? Or do you believe Mendeecees was unfairly placed in a difficult situation? As you are already aware, this discussion is far from over, so please share your ideas in the comments section. Additionally, be sure to click the like button if you have been following the chaos. To ensure you don't miss the next time the set blows up like this, subscribe for more and enable notifications. Your take could be the one that makes a difference. Way it is perceived by all.